There are many different qualitative methods that one can choose to use. However, the three most popular ones are ethnography, grounded theory, and phenomenology. These are the three that we'll be focusing on in this discussion. Ethnography is the systematic study of peoples and cultures. It is designed to explore cultural phenomena where the researcher observes society from the point of view of the subject of the study. An ethnography is a means to represent graphically and in writing the culture of a group. The word can thus be said to have a double meaning, which partly depends on whether it is used as a count noun or uncountably. The resulting field study or a case report reflects the knowledge and the system of meanings in the lives of a cultural group. Ethnography, as the empirical data on human societies and cultures, was pioneered in the biological, social, and cultural branches of anthropology, but has also become popular in the social sciences in general sociology, communication studies, or history, wherever people study ethnic groups, formations, compositions, resettlements, social welfare characteristics, materiality, spirituality, and a people's ethnogenesis. The typical ethnography is a holistic study and so includes a brief history and an analysis of the terrain, the climate, and the habitat. In all cases, it should be reflexive, make a substantial contribution toward the understanding of the social life of humans, have an aesthetic impact on the reader, and express a credible reality. An ethnography records all observed behavior and describes all symbol meaning relations using concepts that avoid casual explanations. Grounded theory is a general research method which guides you on matters of data collection and details strict procedures for data analysis. Grounded theory is a research tool which enables you to seek out and conceptualize the latent social patterns and structures of your area of interest through the process of constant comparison. Initially, you will use an inductive approach to generate substantive codes from your data. Later, your developing theory will suggest to you where to go next to collect data, and which more focused questions to ask, which is the deductive phase of the grounded theory process. In the broadest sense, phenomenology refers to a person's perception of the meaning of an event, as opposed to the event as it exists externally to that person. The focus of phenomenological inquiry is what people experience in regard to some phenomenon or other and how they interpret those experiences. A phenomenological research study is a study that attempts to understand people's perceptions, perspectives, and understandings of a particular situation. In other words, a phenomenological research study tries to answer the question, what is it like to experience such and such? By looking at multiple perspectives of the same situation, a researcher can start to make some generalizations of what something is like as an experience from the insider's perspective. There are three different types of data collection strategies that can be used within qualitative studies. The first is participant observation. In participant observation, the observer participates in ongoing activities and records observations. Participant observation extends beyond naturalistic observation because the observer is a player in the action. The technique is used in many studies in anthropology and sociology. Often the researcher actually takes on the role of being studied. For example, living in a commune, becoming a firefighter, enrolling in flight training school, working in a mental hospital, being a cocktail waitress, living among the mushroom hunters of the Northwest, or joining a cult. There are obvious trade-offs in participant observation research. The researcher is able to gain an insider viewpoint, and the information may be much more rich than that obtained through systemic observation. It has probably already occurred to you that there are potential problems with this. Consider the two sources of error in systemic research, bias and reactivity. These difficulties are magnified in participant observation. Events are interpreted through the single observer's eyes. The technique generally involves taking extensive notes and writing down one's own impressions. Clearly, one's own views can come into play. There is the problem of going native, which means becoming so involved with the sympathetic to the group of people being studied that objectivity is lost. Because the observer is a participant in the activities and events being observed, it is easy to influence other people's behavior, thereby raising the problem of reactivity influencing what is being observed. In-depth qualitative interviews are an excellent tool to use in planning and evaluating extensive programs because they use an open-ended, discovery-oriented method, which allows the interviewer to deeply explore the respondent's feelings and perspectives on a subject. This results in rich background information that can shape further questions relevant to the topic. The key characteristics of in-depth interviews are the following. The first is open-ended questions. Questions need to be worded so that respondents expound to the topic, not just answer yes or no. Second, they need to be in a semi-structured format. Although it is important to pre-plan the key questions, the interview should also be controversial, with questions flowing from previous responses when possible. For example, if an interviewee remarks that the elections are approaching, an appropriate response would be, "How do you feel about the candidates involved?" Next would be to seek understanding and interpretation. It is important to use active listening skills to reflect upon what the speaker is saying. The interviewer should try to interpret what is being said and should seek clarity and understanding throughout the interview. Lastly, you need to record your responses. The responses are typically audio recorded and complemented with written notes by the interviewer. Written notes include observations of both verbal and nonverbal behavior as they occur, and immediate personal reflections about the interview. And the last data collection method is a focus group. A focus group is a form of qualitative research in which a group of people are asked about their perceptions, opinions, beliefs, and attitudes towards a product, service, concept, advertisement, idea, or packaging. Questions are asked in an interactive group setting where participants are free to talk with other group members. The analysis of qualitative research notes begins in the field, at the time of observation, interviewing, or both, as the researcher identifies problems and concepts that appear likely to help in understanding the situation. Simply reading the notes or transcripts is an important step in the analytic process. Researchers should make frequent notes in the margins to identify important statements and to propose ways of coding the data, such as husband-wife conflict, perhaps, or tension reduction strategy, things of that nature. Coding is an important technique in qualitative research such as anthropology or ethnography, and other observer and participant observer methods. In summary, you need to find source data which codes are derived, identify and name codes with open coding, collect notes and ideas with memoing, identify categories and subcategories, find relationships with axial coding, seek the core category, integrate categories with selective coding, triangulate to confirm ideas, and lastly, iterate to develop a grounded theory. So let's begin by talking a little bit more about grounded theory. The basic objective of coding is to extract keywords and other meaningful chunks from the haystack of data that will allow a grounded theory to be developed. The individual codes thus provide both inspiration and verification. A grounded theory is connected to the real world and gives explanation for patterns of behavior that are relevant and important for the people involved. Through discovery of significant categories and many relationships, it becomes dense and saturated and hence theoretically complete. The process of identifying codes, categories, and theories is usually long and exhaustive and can include repeated word-by-word analysis. Note that the overall process should be a slow one. Leaping to meaning, categories, and conclusions can block out much more meaningful discoveries that may emerge if given the time and opportunity. Chance discovery can give great insight if you are ready for it at every turn. Now let's talk a little bit about source data. Data that provides the material from which codes are extracted is often largely based on observer notes, logs, or diaries. Additional data may also be found in items such as published and unpublished documents, papers, books, public records, letters, photographs, videos, and assorted artifacts. The problem with data is that more you have, the more effort it is required to analyze, and with time increasing sharply with the amount of data. Yet more data leads to better categories, theories, and conclusions. What is enough data is subject to debate and may well be constrained by the time and resources the researcher has available. Deciding when and where to collect data can be a critical decision. A deep analysis at one point may miss others, whilst a broad brush may miss critical minutiae. Several deep dives can be a useful method. Data can be difficult to access. For example, when political forces oppose potentially critical investigation, or where rituals are considered secret. Ethics, confidentiality, and determination can all play a part here. There is often less division of activity phases in qualitative research, and the researcher may be memoing and coding as they go. Theoretical sampling is an approach to identifying what data is required next based on the analytical findings so far. In this way, data collection is managed and controlled by the emerging theory. Selective sampling occurs when the researcher decides to sample in a particular locale or seek particular types of people. Again, this is driven by rational thought rather than convenience or bias. Selection of data in cases for exploration can be based on one or more of the three purposes: to extend the emerging theory, replicate previous cases to test the emerging theory, or to extend the emerging theory by choosing a case that is the polar opposite. The types of data selected in theoretical sampling often needs to be varied and is based on what is called slices of data, samples of many different kinds and sources, rather than a focus on one area to the exclusive of many others. Now let's take a moment to talk about open coding. Coding starts with open coding, in which codes are identified without any restrictions or purpose other than the discovery nuggets of meaning. The main secret of open coding is a mental openness that allows for the discovery of the unexpected, along with a curiosity that does not allow for final closure even after texts have been read and codes identified from it. Coding is thus a very questioning activity. Open coding is particularly about labeling and categorizing a phenomena. This must be a careful activity as names come with many connotations. The constant comparative method may be used by constantly comparing each piece of data with codes and notes already identified. Comparison helps identify distinct characteristics in ordinal position on any relevant scale. It is a trap to worry about the real meaning of words, as this is a form of closure. Open coding is about opening up lines of inquiry. Theoretical saturation is achieved when no further new codes or categories are being identified. Further analysis then only goes to test and support the identified theory. Coding can be quite a tedious activity, but it requires expertise. The quality of categories and theories depends on the quality of the coding. Employing others to help coding can very much speed the activity, but they do need to know what they are doing. Now we're going to talk a little bit about memoing. Memos are theoretical notes that occur to the researcher as they are coding and may at some time lead to the discovery of categories and may cause the researcher to go back to the data to explore more. Memos may identify concepts, half-formed ideas, action notes, and other thinking that is a first step towards making cohesive sense from the data. Note that ideas and meaning can be identified at any time, including when the work is not formally underway. When the mind is saturated with data, it can come up with ideas at the most inopportune moments. The researcher thus always carries note-taking equipment everywhere. Sorting. Memos, categories, and codes may be sorted at any time, looking for relationships between them and priorities of the people involved when they need to make choices. This is also called data ordering. Priorities often emerge much like other information in an unstructured way as the subconscious realizes patterns after a long wading through the data. Items may be, for example, be written on post-it notes or cards and moved around to form cluster or clouds that can turn into categories or allow new relationships to be found. Category folders may also be kept, containing clippings and codes on items that support a single category. A critical aspect of coding is the identification and naming of categories, such as greeting people or vehicle breakdown. Codes that lead to discovery of a greeting category might come from observation of encounters with other people in which particular rituals and significance is identified. Categories can also include subcategories, such as shaking hands or removing the wheel. Categories can include such things as contextual conditions, properties, interactions, strategies and tactics, actions, consequence of actions. Naming of categories is important, as this gives a handle by which the category can be thought about and discussed. Names come with previous meanings, so their choice is very important. For example, rain, raining, and precipitation have a different impact on thoughts. Additional words may create a more precise phrase, such as heavy rain or sudden showers. The core category in a coding exercise is the central code or principle around which other codes cluster. There is often one core category, although there can be more. For example, a study of commuters might conclude the core category is going to work, and a study of teenagers could settle on growing up. A core category should be central, with many relationships to other categories, be easy to relate to other codes and categories, appear frequently in the data denoting its importance, support theories that already appear and which might be proposed, move ideas forward as links and more meaning is uncovered. The core category gives central meaning to the conclusions of the research and is often the holy grail that the researcher is seeking. It is the main theme of the situation and may represent a central problem or issue for the people involved. Once the core category is identified, then other related categories can be linked to it, leading to an integrated and coherent explanation of the subject of research. Axial coding occurs when there is a strong focus on discovering codes around a single category. For example, looking for interactions, strategies, and so on that relate to the category. For example, in a category of greeting, there may be a search for encounters with others, talk about previous encounters, and emotional impacts from meeting others. Axial coding can also be used to develop categories, seeking relationships that will expose a category. When open coding is often about identification and naming, axial coding is about links and relationships. Axial coding may be done at any time, even before firm categories are identified. For example, when a code of rain is first encountered, then an exploration of the impacts and importance of rain may ensue. Axial coding also helps identify relationships between categories and the links that create a web of meaning for people under the study. Selective coding is even more focused, as it works around the core category, looking specifically for links to it and how it may or may not be the heart of the matter. This particularly helps with the integration of categories. When theory is being developed, triangulation is finding a third element outside of the cause and effect items to corroborate apparent relationships, where possible quantitative data may be sought to triangulate qualitative findings. There are many advantages and limitations to qualitative research. Two of the major advantages is its strength is in uncovering more about a people's experiences, learning why things may be the way they are. A second advantage is that its qualitative research focuses on small groups. It can be less expensive than quantitative research, which may require large groups of participants or expensive measurement tools. There are also some disadvantages or limitations to qualitative research. Qualitative research methods collect data about what your select group of participants feel or think and how they behave. You can't necessarily use this data to make assumptions beyond this specific group of participants. It is not a research method that conveniently allows for the collection of statistical data. However, this is only a disadvantage if your research question also requires statistical data. Adopting a mixed methods approach is one way to overcoming this problem.